the MUD 46 meeting for February. I am Tom Schwarzkopf. We're going to begin with the call to order. I see that everybody is here, so we can, and let's move on to the opening invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. Bow your heads. Heavenly Father, we gather today and give you thanks for your blessings upon our meeting, our community, and our nation. Thank you for allowing each of us to always work diligently for the common good and in the best interest of those that we represent. Your guidance today shows us to be insightful and prudent in our intentions, visions, plans, deliberations, decisions, and their fulfillment. Working through your hand, Lord, we derive a welcome spirit to all those in attendance to engage in thoughtful dialogue and discussion with respectful understanding, wisdom, and humility. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag.
I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
All right, thank you. Item number 3, receive comments from the public. Do we have anyone? Okay. Item 4, do we have any requests?
Not this month.
Thank you. Thank you. The consent agenda, item 5 through 9. I know that we're pulling item 8. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay. Is there anything else that needs to be pulled? Okay, I need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make the motion.
Okay. A second?
Second.
Any discussion? All right. All those in favor? Opposed? All right. That passed. Item 10. Receive the staff update on the Spindle Tree Circle planting topic.
The property has been conveyed to the Woodlands Township that was in question. I think last month, Alan, the resident, reported he would like to see plantings extended onto the drainage detention area. I did get an estimate from Chris Meeks if that would happen. Chris Noons, if the current estimate for irrigation is about 20,000, so it would go to 40. And he said his current agreement is to split the irrigation with MUD 46. That was kind of a tentative agreement, but he couldn't split the other portion. That would have to be borne by MUD 46 if we did that.
Okay, 20 apiece.
No, the original estimate to irrigate what's there now was 20,000, and our conceptual agreement was that we would split that with the township, that they would be a part of this project to stimulate growth where the plants exist, where the trees exist.
Existing trees.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Alan wanted us to expand the irrigation to accommodate a new row of trees if he were able to get the funding and pay for it. But that brings the irrigated area up to 40,000.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
That's per year.
40 installation,
Is this
$40,000
just
in capital cost.
the cost of trees or cost of irrigation?
It's just irrigation. Alan said he was going to be researching to get funding for the trees. I haven't heard from him since last week.
All right. I did hear from the township. They donated to Sterling Ridge 4 dozen trees. And Alan knows about it and he's taking care of planting those. So that's an update for everyone else. Anything else?
No, sir.
All right.
So
Thank you.
do we need to get from him his plan for where he's gonna plant them?
if you want to have it, if you want to have the plan.
And my concern is we need plan them where they can be, you know, not run over by mowers.
I don't know the answer to that. You'll have to get with him.
So Jim, the 20,000 for irrigation up at the top. Chris is only gonna pay for half that.
Conceptually, that was his offer. We haven't formalized anything. We said once we couldn't enter, or he couldn't enter to an interlocal on a property that wasn't owned by the township. That's been conveyed now. They worked it out where the township now owns that property. So conceptually, we could enter into an interlocal with the township to share the cost of that irrigation construction and some sort of agreement going forward for water. If the board wants me to further negotiate this.
You're the one that doesn't like that idea.
You know, we started off discussing this where we agreed to write a letter, you know, asking the township to do something, and that we would allow them to plant on the hill. Would object to that. And somehow that has evolved into, now we're gonna take a piece of property owned by the township and we're gonna share in the irrigation. And to me, that's kind of out of our mission. And then what we don't know, because we have a very large area, and you know, how many other areas like this could now come up where, you know, people would say, well, you did this for this area. And now what about us down here in Grover's Mill? We don't know what it is. We've already had one community come to us and we'll put cameras in. And we said no to that. And I just, I go back to what we originally asked to do. I don't know if you ever wrote the letter, but.
Sure, and this is the result of that.
We wrote a letter, but.
This is the absolute
Yeah,
result.
We're not at a point where we're solving the problem he asked us to solve, which was to plant trees with the hill. I don't think it's within our mission to irrigate, you know, the boundary lines between the township and us. Obviously, this was irrigated at one time. It was neglected for whatever reason. And to me, it's the township responsibility. And I hate to say it, 10K is 10K.
And, you know, Chris is hard, he's taking the hard-nosed approach of he won't irrigate anything that's not township. And I guess I hate to be the negative one, but I kind of agree with Dave. He ought to irrigate his land.
I mean, if he wants me to go to the township meeting and speak on his behalf, I will gladly go and speak positively of the township on this project, but I'm hesitant because not knowing what else may pop up, that we set a precedence of doing stuff that really isn't even our land. That's my concern.
Couple of months ago, we had a representative of another HOA that borders the retention pond about some break-ins, and we took the position that it would not be, it's not part of our mission to provide security. And we should have a hard time, I have a hard time justifying funds to help a very small portion of our constituents at the expense of the rest of them. So for the letter writing, for all of that, I was on board 100%. The $10,000, I mean, $10,000 here, we've now set a precedent, and other areas within 46 can come to us and say, hey, what about us? And where does the 10 grand stop? And we didn't budget for it. So from my perspective, I agree with David and George.
But George, if you talk to him, if he says, hey, I'm going to speak at the township, will you come meet me there? I will do that. and speak in favor of the township fixing this irrigation. And he just picks a day. I'll be
You'd probably get quite
quite a crowd.
yeah, you could get.
Good option.
Very good.
All right. Thank you. All right, item 11, receive information from Director Letterman on the February 2nd meeting.
I'm gonna
You have the
pass this
floor.
around. It's bullet points. And the purpose is of me presenting these bullet points is to kind of take a quick overview of what happened on February 2nd and the SGRA, and kudos to you all, especially Dan and Chris, who kind of chaired that meeting. There was a lot of good information passed, and that's kind of indicative of what we've been getting from the Woodlands Water Agency. So kudos to you, Jim, and your people. But we need more. David and I are looking more closely into the finances of both the SGRA and also the WWA and of course Mud 46. And George has done a great job talking about with the wastewater treatment plant analysis, and his work there is doing terrific. But one of the things that bothered me, and I made the comment during the meeting, we had the opportunity to meet with the SGRA leadership team, and we only had 3 out of 10 MUDs represented. And I look at that as a serious problem, and I hope it's not indicative of how other MUDs manage their affairs and their business. But I think it's something that, to me, is a flashing amber light. And one of the key things that came out for me was new learning. And Connie is here. She walked in. She gave us something, and I'll address that a little bit further on in my my notes here. The key point is that our community has provided incentives for investors and developers over the past 40 plus years. And my belief is developers and investors are not the enemy. They've helped make the Woodlands Township what it is today. They've helped us build our home into one of the finest master plan communities in America. They're welcome in our home, but I think we've reached the point in time and the expenditure level that there's got to be new rules imposed. And over the last month, since I contacted Jim and asked for this time at the meeting here, which I think was the second, right after the meeting with the SGRA, I did some research on master plan communities across the country and contacted the 2 oldest communities in the nation, Reston, Virginia, and Columbia, Maryland. I then took a look at the top 50 master plan communities in the nation as reported by several different companies, and I can forward that to anybody who's got an interest. And one of the things that I found out is that all of these communities fund investors, developers, construction, strategic planning for the first 5, 10, even 15 years. But at some point in time, and that from, again, it's a limited data set that I've got, only about 5 or 6 organizations I spoke to. After 7 to 12 years, they re-examined the whole posture of providing incentives. From the world I come from, it's called economic forensics. You take a look at the business model, creates this entity, it achieves those breakpoint goals, and then the economics change dramatically. We have a township that is a draw. We're a magnet to other companies, other people. We're looked at as the gold standard for the nation. And, you know, kudos to everybody in this room. But the economic forensics have changed. And the business model 101, where all master plan communities during the initial stage need local and external funding. And the question is, what's a success and how do we measure it? And that's probably something that will be one of the takeaways from hopefully this meeting. But the majority of the MPCs achieve breakpoint within 15 to 20 years. We've passed that. In my opinion, Woodlands Township passed it some 15 to 20 years ago. I took a more conservative approach and said maybe it's 12 to 15. But in looking back at land prices, I contacted two commercial real estate companies here in the Woodlands. Those organizations, investors, developers, companies, builders who purchased land over the past 10, 15, 20 years have received an inordinate return on their investment. Whether they've sold it or not, the value of it has gone up considerably. One of the things I believe that we need to do at this point in time is we need to stop paying investors. We need to, I guess the new learning that I got from the meeting is that we shouldn't pay companies to come into our home and cause incremental costs to our residents and to the infrastructure organizations like the MUDs, that we need to pay our community to build. And what I learned from the word phrase from Connie was impact fees. I never heard that. Laura Norton, who represented 47, never heard that phrase, and she's got a lot more experience than I do with this. I'm only 8 months into this. Dave never heard of this phrase. I don't know about the rest of the folks here, if you've heard about impact fees. But I think it's time that we sit back and say, you know, the market has changed, the business model has changed. We respect everything that investors and developers have done. We welcome them into our community. We want to continue to welcome them into our community, but we've got to stop paying them to invest in our community, which they would do anyhow since they own the land. So my recommendations from this that I'm bringing forth here for discussion is immediately cease all MUD incentive payments to investors in the Woodlands Township. Consider clawbacks for payments made during 2022 and 2023. To develop a methodology and program to equitably charge investors and developers impact fees to fund the infrastructure needed to allow them to build in our community. And the second tier, soft costs as well as hard costs, for installing these new things, because roads change, traffic signals change, electricity needs change, water changes. We all know these things. And I think it's now time that we implement an impact fee for every MUD in this township and start running business the way our sister MPCs are doing it around the country that have got at least a 15-year history of growing their master plan community. And I'm open to conversations. I've got plenty of facts that I can email to everybody, or have Jim's group email so don't violate the Texas Open Meeting Act. And it's open for discussion, conversation.
Go ahead.
What I'm wondering is when you say impact fee, what it is you really mean. And for example, a builder in Wood Forest is one example. They have a development down off of Grogan's Mill, where MUD 46 years ago agreed to reimburse them for the construction of the infrastructure. And I think that was a $1.5 million commitment. Is that what you're talking about?
I'm going to pass that question on to the person who introduced me to that phrase. And I'm sorry for putting her on the spot. So Connie, I do apologize, but you brought that phrase up and I never heard of it. I did research it and it's a real thing.
Yes, sir.
And when I spoke to a number of master plan community, either managers or in one case, the vice chairman, they're very familiar with that term. And thank you for educating me and the 5 people from the 3 MUDs who were there. But I'd like to kind of expand that. So if you could please answer the question.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Can you identify?
I was going to say, I'll introduce myself. I'm Connie Curtis. I am the Director of Technical and Operational Services for the San Jacinto River Authority. So I work with Dan and Ed and Chris and Jason. I spent 16 years in engineering consulting. So Deidre knows me from the consulting community. Impact fees are by law from statute, the local government code, chapter 395. So y'all feel free to go pull that down and read it if you'd like. As
I did,
Mr.
yeah.
Rodman said, it's out there. it is something that was established as an opportunity for developers to be able to make sure that if they were getting charged a fee, a connection fee into a utility, that it was based on a fair process. And so it's based on how much development is coming on a capital project that is needed for future development. So Mr. Newman, I think you asked a question. I would like for you to repeat it where I make sure that I answer the question that was asked.
I'm trying to understand impact fee. Who is imposing that fee?
Okay, so typically, as a consultant, I did studies for impact fees, and you would do it for municipal entity or municipality. And so, like, let's say the city of Baytown, they have impact fees. And what you would do is you would go in and you would identify, here are the water lines, here are the sewer lines that are going to be impacted if this development in this area comes in. And that 12-inch water line will now need to be a 16-inch water line. And you take that amount of money that it costs to change from a 12 to a 16, and you divide it by the amount of development that comes, and it comes out with a cost per tap. So essentially, if you're going to put in a 4-inch meter, then you have a fee that's associated with it that is assessed by the city of Baytown. So in the MUD application, each MUD would have, if you have a new residence coming in, then they may not pay an impact fee because they may still have the same 3/4-inch tap that they always had. But if that changes to a multifamily unit that's 3 or 4 duplexes where there once was a home, that would change. They would need a larger meter and they would pay that difference. I'll also say, and I just want to clarify this, Mr. Letterman, from what I recall that we were talking about when we introduced this idea of impact fees was you asked the question of how other master plan communities or cities handle it.
Correct.
And so there's really 2 ways that many municipalities or municipal entities handle it. Impact fees, or the developer pays for the infrastructure when they come in. So
Okay.
if there's a development coming in on the outskirts of town and they need a 12-inch water line, instead of waiting for the city to collect money and put in that water line, they can just pay for it up front. And so I think with that, those are the options that you kind of have. You've got your 6th and final accounting of where all of your development has been or what you're expecting. And then anything in and above that, I believe, that's where we've got into the conversations of how that would impact us here.
The question was the 525-ish acres that are undeveloped at this point in time. From my perspective, and in talking to the folks at Reston and Columbia, they said it's not just water and electricity, but also roads have to change and be expanded, and other impact to the community
By
occurs.
Texas law, there are 4 different available impact fees: water,
Mhm.
wastewater, roads, and drainage.
Correct.
Drainage is extremely difficult to prove.
Mhm.
Roads are only within 13 miles of different zones, so that makes it challenging. But your water and your sewer is typically by service area.
Correct.
So, Mr. Newman, to answer your question, more than likely it would be from each MUD of what you would identify, but you'd have to have a study done, and it has to be updated every 5 years, and then, updated to make sure that the rates are applicable.
So what we're doing is different from that.
Yes, and that's my point. The conventional business model of incentivizing companies, corporations to build in your home district is what we've been working under. And that's what virtually every master plan community I spoke to has done in their past. But at some point, people I spoke to call it the break point. And they didn't define break point as a break-even point, but as a break point to where it creates a burden on the community. I think we've passed that point, probably some 10, 12 years ago, maybe more. So from this point forward, I've got a concern that the MUDs are offering incentives when incentives shouldn't necessarily be offered and should be part of the ROI analysis done by any of these corporations that wish to build in our home, as opposed to saying, oh, we're going to cover this with, I think I saw a recent blurb, $4.3 million was just recently approved to give. And I have a problem with that. Doesn't affect 46, but it's indicative of what's happening. And I think we need to take action as a MUD and set the example for the other 9 MUDs to at least consider this. And if they wish to run their MUDs where they go into debt, or they pay additional funds and charge their constituents that's between them and their constituents. I can't be responsible for that.
So at this point, we have one agreement hanging out.
We do, yes.
And then have we paid anything on that agreement? It was 1.7 million roughly rounded up. Have we paid anything toward that agreement? With Forest Bank?
Yeah.
Because they built a garage. Obviously, no sewer and water in the garage. And the sewer and water's in, but there's no
Drainage.
development.
I have to research, but I don't think so.
You don't think so? I thought not, but then I saw something that created doubt in my mind. I mean, if you take that development and
Yeah,
this was,
I think the reimbursement agreement was based on them getting value on the ground. and it hasn't
They
happened.
had to create their own, there's a formula, standard formula for value they had to create in order to be reimbursed, and then it was at the district's tax rate. I think it was at the time. I can't remember what it was.
if you look at that tax rate and you look at the value we would pay, it is a simple break-even calculation. It's 40 years. Now, I'll be honest with you, I doubt that Wood Forest Bank would loan money, to anybody that into the 44th year, they would make a profit. You mean, and I doubt anybody would do that. The question I have having this discussion is also obviously a body of law. And I know we briefly talked about it at times, but I would like a 1-page, 2-page review of that body of law. You mean, and just to understand what Texas says
As to.
about this whole topic of impact fees, about why we continue to reimburse MUDs, what legal right do they have to the reimbursements? Is it strictly a board decision?
Well,
It is.
as to new, yes, it is a board decision. I think the impact fee concept, as you mentioned earlier, is primarily in the realm of cities. You don't see that very often in the MUD space. The question that usually comes before the MUD, a resident MUD, yes, you have a life cycle of a MUD, early development phase,
Right.
transition to maturity, et cetera. And each district, we represent, around 300 in the Houston metro area. So, see different variations, and it depends on the board. As you get into the more mature phase of the life cycle, some boards remain more pro-development, and they offer reimbursement agreements for infrastructure that's necessary. And we have had cases in the Woodlands where if some new infrastructure was necessary, that MUD wasn't going to provide a reimbursement for that. And that's on a case-by-case basis. So then the developer funds it because they don't want to wait for the time when that infrastructure would come in to make the development feasible. They have to build that into whatever the price is going to be that they're going to sell that property for, or what they're going to lease that property for, or whatever it may be. So I think in our world, what we're really talking about is this board offering, I know you can, visit with other boards as well, but first and foremost, what you have authority over is MUD 46, the big area. Is this board going to offer reimbursement agreements for future projects or not? And if the answer is no, then, developer is aware of that and has to make their plans accordingly for any future projects that they may have. And that's just the policy of this board. And that's, it's much as simple as that.
Brian, one question to you about the current agreement that we have to reimburse $1.7 million. Does that have an end date if they do not perform by X period of time?
Couldn't tell you what it is.
About
off the top
7
of my
years.
head, but
I'm
it-
sorry?
7 more years.
They have 7 more years.
They have like 6 or 7 years, right? It ends in 2027, something like that. I have the document. I just don't have it with me. Not to broaden the discussion. I think Fred did a great job, but I hate to leave my friends in the River Authority out of this discussion. So, there's a document called the Sixth and Final. And it's actually, a pretty well.
let's just put mine to bed. Okay.
Okay.
And then we could certainly
Okay.
move on over to the SJRA because Ed's excited.
Yeah, can I ask a question?
Please, yes.
So you spoke about, where are they, is there governmental form of mud in those two other? areas?
Every-
What is their government?
There is nothing, none of the organizations I spoke to had a setup the way the Woodlands does. So the analogy is not mud to mud. It's municipality to, and I'm going to call us municipality because the name is Municipal Utility District. So that's why I did the comparison.
Okay.
Very high level, 10,000 feet, Mach 3.
Okay, so this is just, my questions are just stemming from what our governmental structure is in the Woodlands and what we have the authority. We have the authority to, issue impact fees. We can as a mud can.
I
Yeah.
just learned that, yes, yeah, the beginning of the month.
So what I understand it to be is mud 46. I would want to know, like, if we were thinking about doing this, I would want to know what undevelopable acreage is within our mud. What is still out there that needs to be developed? And that should be a just
Good
GIS.
answer.
That's a GIS exercise. You've got GIS. I think you can.
So
pull-
I have it right here.
Get that off my, always fine.
I only have
And
one of
then-
these, but,
Get that next.
just if you get a copy, if anybody wants it, I have a copy of the sixth and final. Okay,
So,
and that details it's an amazingly detailed document.
so
Yeah.
with that would say how much capacity has been set aside for those undevelopable acres,
So
right?
there's two steps of this. This is why I was going to talk to my friend in the River Authority. So we are dealing with a retail capacity. Right? We're talking here, this wood forest is retail. So it's the system that water and the sewer lines that are put in, it's the drainage. That's what, when they develop a piece of property. And then we have the wholesale side, which the River Authority is responsible for. So this map here shows you what's left to be developed. There's like 4 housing areas, 3 or 4 commercial areas, what I mean stores, 1 residential lot, I haven't found that yet. And that's really about it. You mean, and so that's it's color coded, you can pick it out. I'll give you an example, the fire station, there's some lots behind the fire station. Bear Branch Elementary and Junior High School, there's a lot across the street. And there's a couple lots in, the area you own up here. What is that called?
County, in my viewpoint or my understanding, is basically an accounting mechanism. It's just like an accounting, financial kind of
All the six,
process.
all the sixth and final does with Fred's discussion, it just tells us the vacant lots. It doesn't deal with retail at all. We're retail. So if
Yes.
we're gonna say, we're not paying anymore and just put aside the impact fee, right? Then the developer would come and say, I'd like you to pay for the water sewer infrastructure. And we're gonna say, thank you, we decline.
Correct. That's my
So our
thought.
policy is we would decline. And that's one step.
The development company recently went to Mud 36, right?
Right.
And asked for, and Rhonda might keep me honest, 39, and offered a new piece of territory to that mud. And I don't know what kind of arrangement Mud 39 made with the development company, but you're basically saying if the development company came to us and said, we have such a deal for you over there, let's just say over there somewhere,
Mhm.
you would decline.
Correct.
So let's just take the 2 pieces of property behind the fire station.
Well, use a new piece.
Fairly
An
time
annexation.
Yeah.
for the
Yeah,
infrastructure.
yeah, we're not saying you can't build. That's
Yeah.
ridiculous. Yeah, they own the land. Right,
So-
but they've got to pay their way, and what would have been paid historically and what had been paid as recently as last year with 47 is they agreed to give X number of dollars to a development company to help them build out, to offset the cost of the investment they're making in that land. And my point of view is, at least in 46, we're pretty much built out with the exception of those little dots on there. And we're not increasing our tax base. We're not getting any incremental revenue from it that's significant. Why should we be paying millions of dollars with a 30, 40, 50-year payback? It doesn't make any business sense to me. And apparently, most most MPCs in other parts of the country, one in North Dallas that I spoke to, they've stopped. And they're saying, hey, this has impact to other parts of our community, and you're going to have to, in addition to investing in the infrastructure on your land, you're going to also pay for other impacts to their community. And granted, those particular locations, those communities are different than our MUD. And I respect that. And I know there's a difference, but still the implication is that 10 MUDs in the Woodlands Township are paying investors. I'm going to put investors as opposed to developers because they're all investors. We're paying them to make their return greater for their stockholders or their privately held company. And that's counter to what our charter is, to help our residents provide great water at affordable prices, reasonable prices, and to do it efficiently and effectively. That's how I'm looking at it.
Yes, so I don't think anything that, I don't disagree with anything that you're saying. I guess what my point of this is that we've already paid, or in our sixth interim accounting, we've already accounted for all of the current undevelopable acreage with the development that they had in mind. So if they come back and they say, you know, we needed 400,000 gallons a day, now we need 800,000 gallons a day. So what would
there's two pieces of this.
well, I guess let me finish my thought.
And I'll help.
Yeah, so just also to clarify, none of us were on the board that made that $1.7 million decision.
None of us were on the board.
Yeah,
Right.
none of us were on the board. So none of us made that decision. We're just having to
Deal with it.
deal with it at this point. So what I guess my point is, unless the developer or the development company, because it's usually a development company, comes back and says, I need an additional 800,000 gallons. I need 800,000 gallons for my development. At that point, we can say you've only budgeted for 400. If you needed 800, you're going to need this, this, and this. The cost to you will be this. We've already paid the 400. We've already put in the infrastructure for the 400. As a board, we're saying you have to pay the excess.
Let's cut this problem in half. Okay, so let's take Fred's discussion and then separate it from the talk you just gave, because they're two distinctive things. So what happens is that when you know, Wood Forest comes up, all they do is they put the sewer lines in, the water lines in, they do the drainage. Don't talk about capacities, you know what I mean? Okay, they talk, that comes when they talk about taps. Okay, so what we're saying, what Fred is proposing is that we eliminate payments for the installation of retail water, sewer.
Interior.
No, I'm talking about, like, as an example, if you've been up to Wood Forest, I've kind of went up and looked, right? So they have the roads in, and they have the stormwater drainage in, they have the fire hydrant in, right? And then at each of those points, they have the water and sewer hookup locations. And it's just a vacant lot. It's grass, except for a very big parking deck, which is in that lot. I doubt the parking deck has any water and sewer. And that's how it's set. So they probably, they had planned, and I have a sheet because Brian gave it to me. I don't have it with me, which says, this is what we plan to call, you know, we're going to have 6 buildings. One's a daycare. The other was offices, 6 unique buildings or 7 unique buildings. So what that 1.7 million is the cost of putting that structure in, unrelated to the wholesale system that I did here. So that's what Fred is proposing. Now, let me take a minute, and I've been coming to speed. So, you know, I got the 6th and final here. And so if you go back, the 6th and final, really what this means is that we, over the past 15 so years, our residents have paid the River Authority to build out the wholesale system. We paid as a community about 168 million. We paid here 26 million. And we do that because Lorraine has a budget line, right? And it says each month we transfer money. You mean, and it's called loan. So what happened was, I don't know how you work this legally, but somehow the river thought he took a loan out and we're paying principal and interest and fees in that line to reimburse them for putting in the stuff that you need, new water tank and all that. And
I understand all that.
so we bought taps, and they're called, the definition of, I use the word tap, is called an SFDUE.
Equal
An
single family. Yes.
We bought so many of those. Now, at the moment, I don't know how many we have left, but we have enough left probably to take care of the estimates that were made in the sixth and final. So what this document says, and I'm a little surprised, is it says sixth and final means final,
But it's not.
means that we're not having a seventh.
Yeah,
And-
we will.
No, hold it. No. If anybody wants additional capacity, that MUD has to pay those people directly. Okay, but there's a catch.
One minor correction.
Is that they allow MUD 39 to tap into this. And so MUD 39 bought 300
SFDUEs.
SFDUEs. They bought 300. Now, that's worth about $1 million. So 39 is going to pay them $1 million. Now, I'll be honest with you. I've been going to the board meetings at the river, up at the dam. And I'm standing with that and out there, maybe a couple other people here, and all of a sudden a price of $4.5 million comes out. I actually have that in writing. You mean? And all of a sudden, they were going to have to, developers going to have to pay $4.5 million. And all of a sudden, poof, they modify the sixth and final and let them have it for $1 million. I don't understand all that, but that's
Accurate.
okay.
Correction,
Yes.
is that allowed?
Yes, please go.
So in the sixth and final accounting, somewhere in the supplemental agreements and in the document itself, the river authority has excess capacity in the plants, the lines, the whole nine. So any MUD, if they need additional capacity beyond the sixth and final, they approach us and they say, hey, I need additional capacity. Do you have it available? If we have it available, we sell our excess capacity
Okay.
at cost in sixth and final.
Based on the numbers.
Right, give or take 3,500 for one water, one wastewater. If we don't have the capacity and they need to install a ground storage tank for $3 million, we say, in this case, we'd say MUD 39, you need to give us $3 million because I need to build that capacity to serve your development.
So let me ask this. This is curiosity questions, okay? So that 168 million that the residents of the Woodlands spent over the last decade plus, they paid for the entire system, didn't they?
Mhm.
So we collectively, the MUD, we paid for the system,
Mhm.
right? And my understanding is we bought the capacity. You know what I mean? So to me, we own the system. We own the capacity because we paid for it. And for you to go out and say, if we have extra capacity, well, I think I own it. I think MUD 46 owns a quarter of that capacity because we paid for it. And you guys are asking them to pay you for a system that we own. And that's just my
Are they
theoretical.
tapping into our system?
No, we own, in essence, we paid for the Woodlands division.
168, you're right. I got what you're saying.
Got that.
I'm focusing only on 46 because that's our,
We own, 25% of that, 25% of this.
Well, okay.
That's a theoretical discussion.
You're looking at a system as like a whole, like 39 is on a whole different system.
No, it is not.
Well, they're technically on a whole different wastewater system.
I know, but they're annexing stuff across from us.
That's non-contiguous annexations are allowed. Like, I get,
Right, I don't
yeah.
think that-
Suggestion.
so what you're saying is their non-contiguous annexation close to our mud has to go through our mud lines. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm just saying that, you know, over the last 15 years, right, over the last 15 years, we collectively in the Woodlands, funded a wholesale water system. We funded. You know what I mean? And so right now, they're out there selling the same bridge twice.
So I think, yeah. let me
I
try-
realize I'm stretching here. I mean,
Yeah.
it's meant for discussion.
Trying to think through what you're saying and trying to think of the best way to explain it. So, and I probably oversimplified in my
Yeah, I
legal
understand.
mind, or engineering mind, but I look at it like this. You've got a system, I'm just gonna make up a number of connections. Let's say there's 35,000 connections that are in the system. When you go through an interim accounting and the final one, what the task was out through whatever the date was, you said 7. All the districts come to the table and say, how much capacity do you need? Period. Whether it's 32,000, 35,000, 38,000, come to us and tell us what you need. And then through that projected build out period, of course, things change, development plans change, et cetera. But what was brought to the table, again, just for the sake of discussion, let's say it was, 33,000 and there was 35. Well, you're not going to make everybody pay for the remaining 2,000. It's in the system, but it wasn't necessary to be for projected ultimate development within the.
But it's been paid for by the MUDs.
So what was set out in the supplemental agreement is if someone needed additional capacity, it's all based on location. There could be bottlenecks in the system. Again, I'm way oversimplifying this. There could be bottlenecks in the system that wouldn't allow for one piece of property to use some of what we call slack capacity, but in another location, there's not bottlenecks and you could. Okay, then the question becomes, what do you do with that money? So what we provided for in the supplemental agreement or any funds that are paid from that are supposed to go into the R&R fund to be able to fund future projects that are needed for the entire.
I would view that a little differently and kind of take off on what Dave said. And I didn't mean this to go into such a long conversation. I do apologize. My intent was to just send this out, give this out, get feedback, do a narrative if you all approve it, and then send it out to the other ones. But if we in fact paid for X number of gallons, okay, million gallons per day, and we aren't utilizing all of that, the differential, the unused or slack, as you called it, is still ours.
That you purchase. So for
Yes.
instance, 146, again, making up numbers, let's say you purchased based on projected future
Precisely.
development, you purchased, 1,500 or 2,000.
Whatever, yeah.
But then at the time in 2017, when this was approved, maybe out of that 1,500, you were using 1,100. You projected 400 more for future development. Maybe you've only carved off 25 of that 400. So you still have 375 that you've purchased that you haven't used. That's available for, future development of.
In our mud.
In the mud, correct.
Correct, that's good.
If you need additional capacity over that
Separate
400,
story.
then the district would have the ability out of that hypothetical 3,000 we were talking about of slack capacity. It's on a first come, first served basis, which districts can obtain that for future development. How you decide to charge or not charge your developer for that is up to the MUD. But the district would have the ability, let's say you have an opportunity for, a nice, commercial development and you all say, I want this project to happen. And you got to purchase, an extra 500 over the 400 you got, then, and there's slack capacity for that, then you could get it at what the price of the 6th and final accounting was. And that would go into the R&R fund to fund future development.
All well and good.
Yeah.
But My problem intellectually is follows, is that if the investor who is given the initial projection of what their needs are, and they change design because they look at what's going on in the community and they say, we want to, instead of going 2 stories up, we want to go 4 stories up, okay? Now that's changed everything. The impact is incremental onto what we've already projected. And that's the point I'm making, that we need to give impact fees to those investors that have either changed their design and have created an impact of 46, or they have not complied with their original agreement on what they were going to do, and as a workaround. Investors can go around to building commission and to present their findings, and they might be approved by the township to build what they want to build, but they don't have our approval. What happens then?
Well, in that case, going back to this hypothetical, working through that 500 additional connections that were needed, you would tell that developer, your impact fees, you're gonna pay for that 500 connections, and we're not gonna reimburse you for it.
Correct.
And that's a
And-
board, that's a
Okay,
board policy.
And just to,
Let me interrupt.
go ahead.
We're taking a lot of time to discuss this. Is there a way that I can kill the subject for today, but keep it going for tomorrow?
Let me do this then.
Could I say?
The last steps here, have a discussion, we've had it. I wanted your approval to go forward, preferably unanimously, that we should go forward, or I should go forward with this, to build a business case narrative, to have Jim and Eric, and of course this board look at it. And if they like, and y'all like what you see, then I'd like to send it out to every board member so they could start thinking, in my opinion, a little bit more clearly about what the implications of this means over the next 5, 10, and 15 years. And that's where I'm coming from. So that would end the subject right now, if people want to do that.
Add one thing. So we talked about, most of the time with Fresco was the retail side.
Yes.
You know, we as a MUD, hundreds of these taps, these SFDUEs, and they're valued at $3,500 each. And a single family unit takes 1, multiple family unit takes 3. So you buy the multifamily unit, it's 10,000, roughly 10,000. So if you talk about impact fees, to me, the impact fee in the wholesale system would be reimbursing the MUD for the $3,500. So I think as you think about that, you know, we own that property. It is property.
You know,
And
I'm
impact fee
hearing
is
your
a-
conversation. I think it's really interesting. It was also part of the discussion in the strategic plan for wastewater. And I'm thinking, you know, we're not gonna finish it in
No.
half an hour.
No.
Right.
It's a real good conversation and a good learning.
Likely.
I really like to learn more. But it's gonna take a couple hours to
Yeah.
go through.
Can we,
I'm done.
I don't think we need to take a vote. I think we just have to indicate we're either in favor or not in favor of having
Well, take a
Fred.
vote. That's called take a vote. Let's just make a vote.
Well, okay.
I think it's.
We've had a discussion.
Is this on item 11? Because we don't have action.
It was just
No.
your information. It wasn't set up as
It
an
wasn't
action.
set up to
Okay. Let's not take a vote.
even act.
Do you want me to go to the next step or not?
I would say yes.
I'm sorry, what is the next step? Can you clarify?
For me to build out not just bullet points, but a narrative on the business model and give some case examples and allow us,
You want to do it?
I'm not asking you to do it, no.
No, okay, good.
Yeah. What I want to do is protect us and hopefully have other board members and other MUDs say, you know, what were we thinking? Things have changed. We have to change. So that's my purpose. First, to help us, secondarily, to help my colleagues in the other MUDs.
I like it. Everybody else like it?
I like it.
I like it.
Okay. Can we move on?
Good, thank you.
All right.
Sorry
Thank you,
for the
Brett.
wait.
You did a good job. Item number 12, received SJRA report.
We'd like to cut to the chase,
All right.
and Dan's on a very short time schedule, so I'd like for him to talk about the strategic plan,
Okay.
and then the other items. Prepare a quick email and send you an update on those other items,
Okay.
due to the interest of time, because we also have to be in the 6 o'clock meeting to talk about the same topic.
All right.
I appreciate it. Shifting things around, I gotta go pick up kids at the daycare, otherwise I get a overtime bill, so.
Yeah, okay. All right, talk fast.
So where I'm gonna give an update is in regards to item 16 on your agenda, consider an action giving directing to all trustee on how to vote at this coming trustee meeting in March regarding path forward for the wastewater strategic plan. So going, senior packet on page 39, there is a summary of the stakeholder recommendation that essentially is tied to that, y'all's agenda item today. I want to step through each one of those bullet points, address any questions y'all may have, kind of fully understand what the next step is regarding wastewater strategic plan. So the first bullet is tied to the treatment plan itself. So the aging infrastructure at wastewater treatment facility 1. We went through numerous alternatives through the strategic plan. You know, George, really appreciate you sitting in that. You know, provided a lot of value. Good discussion. The path forward on the plant, though, from the stakeholder recommendations, is to move forward into a phase 2, looking solely at alternative 9, which is build a new facility to replace plant 1 on adjacent land. And the technology utilized would be the membrane bioreactor, the MBR process. So in phase 2, what would that include? So phase 2 is taking it into further optimization of that alternative, with the key piece being right sizing the capacity. So we have discussed alternative 9. Is there this alternative 9.1? You know, that those questions have come up. So that is going to be looked at in phase 2. Is there certain pieces of plant that you would build and size to an ultimate capacity? But then going down to, say, the membranes, that could be built in modules of a certain capacity to where we would build to X amount in fiscal year or year 2027. And then as we see potential further need for capacity or growth in the future, maybe another 10 years down the road, we could set it up during the design and construction to build additional modules to add that capacity in phases. Which, you know, we understand that is kind of what that 9.1 analysis was on. So that will be looked at, taking in the latest data that we can get from the development company and others on what the future growth is. You know, for phase 1, we based it off what's in the 6th and final comment. That was something set in stone that we could go off of and use a baseline. Well, in phase 2 here, we're going to be kind of relooking, is there other updated information out of there that we could pull in to help us right size that capacity. As we do that, we're going to be refining the costs. So in phase 1, it was a very high level cost estimate based on, all right, a plant that we could assume to be 8 million gallons a day, you know, based on that and other benchmarking that, you know, our consultant utilized on similar type facilities, it would be, you know, X number of dollars per million gallons, a very high level cost. As we get into phase 2, right size the capacity, we anticipate costs to come down because the capacity may not be, you know, that 8 MGD that was assumed in the phase 1. We'll also be looking at the layouts more. And as we do those layouts, we could determine what, you know, a more quantity-based cost estimate of, all right, we're looking at approximately X number cubic yards of concrete. And that should cost it. So we can go to a more refined level of cost estimating. Still going to be very preliminary, include a 30% contingency and all that, because we're not into the further design phases, but it's going to be more refined than what was done in phase 1. As we get those refined costs, we can redo the financial analysis, go into similar, working with our financial advisors, looking at the bond funding needs, and ultimately get down rate impact on customers. Which we did do that in phase 1, but I think we'll have a much more higher confidence in the numbers that were coming out of phase 2. So I guess I want to pause there on that bullet point. I guess one other thing to add for that recommendation, that phase two cost is gonna be under $500,000, approximately 6 months. Timeframe anticipated start, we'll say mid-April, after we get all approvals from SRA boards, Texas Water Development Board, which it would be funded utilizing existing bond funds. And we're not asking for any additional bond funds at this time. We have essentially funds on hand to be able to utilize going to these next phases. Questions on alternative 9 or that phase 2 piece of the recommendation?
One quick question to your question about Conroe.
Yeah, that was my email. I didn't include a lot of people here because the Texas thing.
So Greg was asking us to do a little digging on Conroe's wastewater plant. It's a 6 million gallon a day plant. It came in at around 60 million. Connie has done a lot of digging today with various people she knows. And so she's putting together an email to send out or to make available to all the directors, giving you the pluses, minuses, everything to it. So that's forthcoming.
That's great. The information I got that was confirmed by an article that appeared in Impact was 10 to 12 million gallons a day for Conroe. That was what they said that they are currently capable of delivering with the current system in place. I don't know the answer to that. I'm just saying that's what was there. And when I spoke to a person there, his feedback to me is that everything's working well. And I kind of got into the odor issue, and it got too engineering for me. I didn't want to get into that. I shared that with conversation with Dan, but yeah, if you could give us that information, it would certainly help me to the 4 people that stopped me or called me up or emailed me about it, because I just gave them basic stuff. I need more.
Yeah, what do you think you'll have?
So just really quick, full disclosure, the company I work for are the design engineers on that, and they're doing the system for the odor control, so.
And it's through the soil, right?
Pardon?
Soil. They're filtering the air through the soil is what.
I don't
I
know
was
what
told.
they're going to do
Yeah.
with it yet. That just got approved by council last week.
Okay.
The design got approved by council last week or so 2 weeks ago. So just letting you know that the company
Okay.
that I work for did the design, they're doing the design of the odor control. So when I see that, I'll look through it and I'll probably ask internally. So yeah.
You're welcome. That's any questions.
Yeah.
So we definitely acknowledge your questions and just wanted to let you know.
Oh, we all understand we need it. I mean, the valid set of questions.
Right, and I've had a handful of conversations in the last day and the last week to try to compile, because we knew it was something that you asked about in the second or somebody did in that meeting on the second. So we've been compiling information, much like what we did with the Friesen Nickel stuff. So something along those lines is coming.
Good, thank you.
You know, to me, the surprising element, and is the price that they paid $60 million, and we're talking $400 million.
No.
We're not?
No.
So I can give a sneak peek on what I know if you'd like,
Either
just
way.
briefly.
Dan's running out of time.
Dan's gonna- I can give you a sneak peek when Dan is done.
Yeah, if you're prepared to send out an email sometime this week or next, then we're covered.
Okay, good. Okay.
I'm good.
Just for David's clarification, we did ask that question at the beginning. I was asking those questions about the price differences between them. We can go back to the minutes and discuss that, but just for Dan, I'm gonna ask a question really quick. So who is doing the land acquisition? Who's actually doing the process?
That's not been determined. We haven't been authorized to do it.
Right.
Okay.
We have not started any.
External, it'll be external, right? Because there's tons of requirements you have to go through for.
There will be an external
Yeah.
land team of legal and survey.
Legal appraisals.
So does that, the 6 million, does that consider the cost of getting all that? Is it all inclusive, or is that just land cost? Like you're expecting to pay 6 million for land?
Sure, good question. So the 6 million includes those. So that refer to soft costs or the legal fees
Okay,
associated with that land acquisition process. Yeah.
Does it include the land?
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
okay.
Because in another document, you'll see that we have 5 million, and that's what we're anticipating land costs. So we're anticipating consulting costs to be about $1 million. Yes.
And no, completely, because I mean, yeah, you're gonna go higher than what the appraisal district has on it, because they're gonna be low. Okay, so at 10% design, what do you expect to get at a 10% design? What are you anticipating? Like just roughly, like, is it just the preliminary sketch or is it some drawing? Like what does it entail?
There would be preliminary sketches for the layouts. But really, it's more tied to determining what the capacity needs to be built.
Okay,
So it's more analysis on that than, start from the design.
okay. And the preliminary design for the route analysis, fatal flaw survey and all that, what is the cost of that? What is the budgeted cost?
So can't really break it down the preliminary, but we are planning to utilize the existing 2017 bond funds to fund preliminary and final design. We're looking at about $4 million to take that from preliminary through final.
Look on page 54.
So preliminary, it could be $1 million. And that's one piece too. So I do want to touch on that recommendation where the second bullet was tied to proceeding with the land acquisition and the recommendation for acquiring land necessary for the treatment facility. We don't know what land we need yet for the conveyance piece. So that's hence the third bullet of commencing the preliminary engineering to do a route analysis, look for any fatal flaws tied to the concept that Priest and Nichols have developed of we can put in this gravity line and eliminate 5 lift stations. So we want to make sure, that is possible. And it's going to take kind of the next step of starting that preliminary design to really vet that concept.
Okay.
That is something.
The reason I was asking is because you gave us land acquisition cost, you gave us the phase 2 cost for them to do that, additional analysis. And then you've got this preliminary analysis. So it's my understanding that what you're asking of us is, can we go forward with land acquisition? Can we go forward with getting Priest and Nichols to do phase 2? And then can we go forward with doing a preliminary design for the conveyance system to eliminate 5 lift stations?
Correct.
That's your ask. So that's why I was asking, like, number one, the 6 million, what you're asking for, it's coming out of this. 500,000, it's coming out of this. So that's why I was asking for a number on that last preliminary design.
And
Um,
$1 million for the consultants would occur over the next 1 to 2 years. The $5 million would not occur until after we have enough information to know that things are.
Post item 2, right? Yeah.
So I was just wanting to get a value in my head of all the 3 apps.
Full amount, the 200 million that we talked about for the whole project, it's a couple of.
What would be helpful to Dave and I, who are looking at the financial aspects of this, the more detail you can get during this next $500,000 phase by line item, even if you put a contingency of 30%, I just want to know what your thinking is compared to the way it was before. And I think that's a fair question, so we can make an intelligent and a well-informed decision. Is that how you're planning to do that for us?
We're happy to provide that. Yeah. During
Because I'm still learning, Okay, great. Thank you.
One other thing I do want to add is, David and Fred, I do know you heard some of these comments at that February 2nd meeting from another MUD director regarding the MBR membrane treatment technology.
Yeah, that was
There's a memo
160.
up here. If you did not pick one up, we can get it. I'm not going to go into detail, but read through it. Let me know if you have any questions. But this is a memo addressing some of the questions that have come up regarding, who are the manufacturers of the membrane? Where are they located? How many are out there? Are they interchangeable? Where's the spare parts if something goes wrong? Where's the field representatives and the survey? How do we mitigate risks, as we design and construct a new facility? So I think this is a good memo that goes into some details on those questions and want y'all to make sure that.
Just scanning it looks pretty good. Thank you.
So to summarize these bullets that Petra mentioned, you got land acquisition, 6 million.
Correct.
Then this station, rationalization, if you want to call it that.
The feasibility and route analysis, that's probably gonna run million to 2 for this initial phase. Because they've got to do surveying, geotechnical, identify where the fail flow. And then there's the phase 2, which is $500,000.
There'll be an RFQ for the.
And what's that $500,000 for?
That's to do the right sizing, the optimization of the plant.
That's step too detailed.
Basically, they just look at the area, they try to get it from point A to point B. They'll give you
There'll be some.
they'll probably give you like 2 options of what can be done. They'll give you the land to do it, like the land cost. That's what they're gonna give you with that. So we have to give our trustee person authorization. We have to say, yes, we either yes or no, we want you to go forward with agreement to these 3 things. That's what we have to do.
I want to ask one question before Dan walks out the door.
Go ahead.
So I thought I heard something I wanted to hear. And I thought I heard you mention option 9.1 will be evaluated in this. I heard 9.1, I think.
And I know y'all
Make sure-
have referred to it as 9.1. Really, it is just we are gonna look at alternative 9 in the sense of possibly phasing.
Okay, that's what I want to hear.
That's the key point, right? I agree with
If
Karen.
there is a way to phase
That's what I want to hear.
certain components, not the whole plant,
Sure.
certain components.
Sure.
Right. Yeah, George and I spoke about this after he did his, great workup, and I'm 100% in agreement with what George is asking. Yeah,
And I understand, you gotta design the feed system, as it were.
Right. They have to,
Yeah,
the screens, that may be
you're
over
in
the
Paris.
right.
But
I
what
understand
Dan
that.
alluded to could be that the membranes could be fixed.
Good.
And I will say too, the way.
I just want the evaluation done.
It's gonna be done.
Okay, thank you.
We've committed to you,
Okay, good.
to all of you.
Okay,
Good.
Dan, get out of here.
So,
At least
Thank
you
you.
don't hear the vote. You did the work.
I'll-
Well, I think the vote is item number 16 and we're on 13 at the moment. But we understand.
Thank you for your understanding.
So again, if you can answer that, we'll defer, but we have down here life cycle cost.
Mhm.
And it ranges from 1.6 to $1.8 billion. And another table you guys have that gives you kind of a water flow table,
Right. Those will all be updated as part of phase 2.
phase 2. And this, when you see this thing level out, that's let's say 250 million. So that's phase 1 of the plan. And then it kicks up
Well,
again.
phase,
But what I mean is.
in that
it's something
scenario-
that you want.
in that scenario, it's that first part of the plant plus the conveyance line, the 250.
Takes us out to 20.
47.
Yeah.
Well, let me just add too, when you're looking at the life cycle cost, you're not looking at just the capital, you're looking at R&R as well.
Right,
So
but
what-
the blue line would be capital. That's what it's labeled.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
And so we're talking about 250 in capital costs, and then it jumps again in the latter years after 51.
Because of what happens with wastewater plant 2.
Okay.
Because at 2047, that's when it needs some major.
And then when you guys say 8 million gallons per day flow, is that wastewater 1?
That's wastewater 1, but that's the permitted capacity. And
Permitted capacity.
that's what we analyzed all the options based on.
Just to be completely clear, because I know that you're a numbers guy, your permit is 7.5
Right.
or 7.8.
I think another
We're
chart
around
around
it.
up here.
In case you want to be really precise, so it's 7.8, but we're saying 8. In the same way that it's.
But the bottom line is, we're going to look at the flow and analyze it to determine what the right size of the plant needs to be.
And I'll just say, whether Conroe did the right thing or not, I don't know. But I would appreciate an understanding and discussion about what they did, what we're doing, kind of a defense.
We're happy to do that. And that's what Connie is preparing.
Yeah.
You were copied into my email and Dan said it's exactly what they plan to do.
Right.
And now we heard it's given to Connie, so I'm comfortable with it.
That's the-
Yeah.
No. She has the resources, the sources.
All right. Let's skip on down to item number 16 and let's talk about this vote on the strategic plan. We have our trustee here who went to the meetings. I do know that
What are you talking about now?
we have to vote on this item number 16.
Right.
As a mud board, we have to direct our trustee on how to vote. Do you have anything to say?
Why not?
Well, do you have a recommendation on how, from your meetings, do you have a recommendation?
When you say that, I'd like to hear your discussion. Let me, I didn't attend the big review in Dawson Hospital in January. So
Who did?
You and me and
Okay, all right. Do you have something to say?
No.
Okay. Do you have something to say?
I have gotten my concerns resolved.
Okay.
so you would have reversed your vote from the previous meeting? You
What
voted
I
no.
would, if I was gonna do it, I'd vote for approval now.
Okay. And
And trustee, what would your recommendation be?
I would, based upon Director Newman, I would, him reversing his decision. I would agree. that we would-
I had some
With this-
concerns myself. I felt like the initial analysis was lacking some benchmarks. It did not say that you had any, it just seemed like you were throwing numbers out and whatever stuck to the wall, you went with that. I guess what I'm trying to say is I would have liked to see more concrete data that supported the numbers that you threw out, because this whole project is quite expensive and it will be a hard sell. But I'm still undecided.
One comment is, we started off a year ago, year and 3 months, something crazy. And it was a feasibility study. And at that time, it was consolidating plants 1 and 2 up on Research Forest. And that feasibility was examined. It's been boiled down, simplified. And I think the plan that we've got right here now it's more attainable. It's a real attainable project at this point, where before I don't, I want to say there's an awful lot of engineering work that's been done. Okay.
I mean, in Tom, I have reservations. But we've been around for 6 months, basically. This has been going on for a while. Newman has been attending a lot of meetings. And I have reservations, but I don't know how. I mean, I printed out 250 pages, at least 2 reports. And, I've been going over and over and over. And I saw the article in Conroe. But if they're gonna proceed with land acquisition, the conveyance routing, you know what I mean? And what was the other one?
Land acquisition, which is a.
And then the study on cost.
Right.
So. And I came in here with a different opinion.
So
Yeah,
when
that's what you- so-
we talked about,
So none of that is
Originally-
lost if we decide to go a different way. Am I right? I mean, you're gonna have to do these 3 steps irregardless
Correct.
of the
Correct.
expenditure. And so I may be uncomfortable with numbers, but I look at this way, it allows you to continue with, in the decision, we all, I think, agree that we want a wastewater plant.
I think the concept of, pumping water all the way across the
County.
township
Township.
was $100 million. And they have justified this section that they're gonna do
Yeah.
as eliminating lift stations. And by eliminating lift stations, they're able to justify this conveyance system that they're proposing. They have justified the concept of membrane technology by the reduced cost of building the plant, 10% less cost. So I think what they're proposing is justified, where in general, the concept of consolidated plant is still possible, but not in the immediate plant. It, at this point, is not a justified concept.
But again, this initial payment, if membrane turns out to be not, then nothing, we've lost nothing.
Right, so
Right.
all three things we're asking for today,
Well,
let me
Right.
recap this. The land that we're asking for authorization to go acquire, regardless of what the stakeholders brought back as a recommendation, whether it was alternative 9 or your baseline that we would have been keeping portions of the existing plant working in, you needed this property. So that's what we're asking for authorization on. So that's for the property acquisition, $6 million. This is a preliminary engineering study for the conveyance alternative, not a final. We can bring back the results to you and show you what it is, show you how much the land costs. And if y'all choose to not do it, then we don't have to abandon those lift stations. We could leave the system as it is today. So that's an alternative that is still on the table after this is done. So we're asking for alternative there. Then it's $500,000 for us to go and refine alternative 9 and bring you back an optimized plant sizing so that we have a better idea of the phasing, because we've not done enough engineering to really know and define that capacity. That's what this is. It's $500,000 to bring you back a refined alternative to help y'all be more comfortable with the numbers. To be honest with you, when we came into the stakeholder meeting, I don't know, Mr. Newman, if you remember this, SRA was making a recommendation for let's just move forward with preliminary engineering on alternative 9. And there was a lot of angst over that. And so we revised our recommendation of, okay, instead of going completely into what we would call as complete preliminary engineering on the plant, let's take a step and let's break it off and let's revise this capacity. Let's look at this and make sure everybody's comfortable and bring it back again. And so we've kind of chopped it down from what we initially were thinking so that the MUD directors can get comfortable. So these are 3 things that need to happen regardless of what we do. Does that help?
In all fairness, though, I think y'all are always gonna told us that you were gonna do a phase 2 part of this.
Yeah,
That's what you always
Yeah,
were
we
telling.
did. I think that our initial scope was broader than what we've brought to you today.
Okay. Have we concluded the discussion? All right. I'm gonna make a motion that we approve sending the, yeah. How do I word this? Help me out here.
The recommendation.
Approve the recommendation, the stakeholder recommendations and instructions to the trustee. All those in favor?
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion, any additional discussion? All right. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Okay, the motion passes.
Thank you very much.
You bet. All right, let's move on to item number 14, general manager's report.
And we didn't really do, can I ask some questions, just really, really quick on 12? Very, very, very quickly.
Okay.
When you're printing these out, can y'all make sure that we can see everything?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. We were, our main person was recovering from surgery and
Okay,
we got
because it got cut off and I was like, I don't know what I'm reading. Okay. And then in your memo from Chris Meeks to Jim, Ed, and Pam, you have a page 41. You have an out of service generator, 41.
So just high level, real quick, every year, if there's excess funds, remaining funds from the previous year, we present a memo, has a couple options. One is we can give you the money back. Second is we can use it, keep it, and identify projects. So what this is saying is there's $370,000 left at the end of FY 22. Large portion of that is due to a generator that had shipment delays and just came in the past month. So we're paying for it out of this fiscal year. We're asking to keep the money so we can pay for the generator as well as do a rate model. The Woodlands Division currently does not have a rate model. We have two budgets that we manually do every year, so that's where we're asking to keep the 374.
Okay, you answered.
And that decision would be made at the trustee level on March.
Okay. So anything we say or do today has no bearing.
Well,
Okay.
for information, at this
All right.
Okay,
Thank you, Chris.
question. You answered both of them.
and for the GM report, in the interest of time, I don't have anything,
That we should know already.
anything additionally. It's not in your packet.
Very good. How about an attorney's report? All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah, he was.
Item 19, I believe, has been transferred till next month.
Okay.
You too. Yes. Oh, I'll be in the audience.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Do we need to recess? All right. Do you have?
I have a new agenda for next month.
Okay, let's get to that when we get to it. Item number 22, discuss matters for placement on future agenda.
So I'd like to take 5 minutes next time and update about Spring Creek.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion for next month? All right, I make a motion that we adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we're done.
30 minutes.